Some people don't change, they just hide their flaws better. You've met them before, people who seem to have it all together, who've gone through the motions of change, promised to be better, improved their habits, maybe even made a public declaration about their transformation. But as time passes, you notice something: they haven't actually changed. Not at their core. They've just hidden their flaws a little better. It's easy to believe that people change, that they evolve. We hope for growth, for redemption, for the best versions of the people we care about. But the hard truth is, some people don't change. They only get better at concealing who they really are. We're all familiar with the phenomenon: the person who tells you they're working on themselves but somehow keeps falling into the same destructive patterns. The person who swears they've learned their lesson only to repeat the same mistakes a few months later. It's frustrating, isn't it? Because we've been led to believe that change is possible and that it's something people actively pursue. But what if I told you that change, in the way we often think about it, isn't the end goal? That some people don't change at all, they simply hide their flaws behind new behaviors, strategies, or personas. It's not an easy pill to swallow, but it's necessary to see. The truth is, some flaws are deeply ingrained. They're not just habits, they're core parts of a person's character, their identity. And while surface-level behaviors can be masked, like cleaning up one's act, controlling impulses, or faking it, the internal issues often remain unchanged. So, in today's video, we'll unpack why some people don't truly change and instead hide their flaws better, why we fall for this illusion, and most importantly, how you can navigate it when you encounter it, either in yourself or in the people around you. The illusion of change. We've all heard the saying, people can change. It's a mantra of hope, especially when we're dealing with relationships, whether they're romantic, familial, or friendships. We want to believe in second chances. We want to believe that anyone can turn their life around. The reality is, the change most people experience is not as profound or as long-lasting as we like to believe. The challenge here is recognizing the difference between temporary change and true transformation. True transformation requires internal work, introspection, a willingness to confront deeply held beliefs, and a commitment to change that doesn't rely on external validation. In contrast, when someone is simply hiding their flaws better, they aren't doing the deep work. They're just covering things up with layers. They may become more perfect at appearances, but the foundation remains cracked. This is why so many people who seem to have turned over a new leaf often revert back to their old ways when things get tough. Because the leaf was never truly turned. They simply learned how to camouflage it better. Let's think about an example many of us can relate to: dating. You meet someone who seems kind, thoughtful, and caring. They show you their best self, putting their best foot forward. They might be aware of their previous flaws. Perhaps they were lazy or had commitment issues, and they've made changes in their behavior. They're now more punctual, more communicative, and more attentive. For a while, things seem great, and they even talk about how they've changed for the better. But then, something small happens. They make an excuse for why they were late to a date. They stop communicating as openly as they once did. Slowly, the old habits that they promised to change begin creeping back into the relationship. What happened? Were they lying to you? No, not necessarily. They might have genuinely believed they were changing. But when things get difficult, they don't go back to the root cause, they just hide the flaw better. They become adept at covering their tracks or brushing things under the rug. The surface-level changes are there, but they don't address the deeper issues. This is one of the most dangerous traps in relationships, the illusion of change. It's not that they're actively trying to deceive you, it's that their flaws are still there, but they've learned to manage them in a more subtle way. The root of inauthentic change. So why is it that people don't change at their core? What makes it so difficult to truly transform ourselves? One reason is the fear of confronting uncomfortable truths about themselves. Growth isn't just about stopping bad habits. It's about facing the things within us that we don't want to see. Imagine trying to change a deeply ingrained trait like narcissism, selfishness, or a lack of empathy. These aren't just surface-level issues. They are deeply rooted in a person's worldview, often shaped by their upbringing, past trauma, or insecurities. In order to truly change, someone would have to face these uncomfortable realities and take full responsibility for the harm they may have caused others. That's hard, really hard. When you've built your entire identity around certain behaviors, whether it's being the life of the party to cover up insecurity, or acting aloof to mask deep-seated fear of intimacy, the very act of acknowledging these flaws feels like a threat to your sense of self. For many people, it's easier to stick with what they know, even if it's unhealthy, than to face the discomfort of change. The brain is wired to resist change, to stick with the known, even if the unknown would lead to a better outcome. So, what do people do instead? They adapt. They hide their flaws better, they camouflage their true nature, but they never truly address the root cause. This is why so many changed people end up reverting back to their old ways. The old patterns, the flaws they tried to hide, were never truly confronted. They're still there, waiting to come to the surface when the right trigger presents itself. Real-life example. Take John, who was known for being self-centered and neglectful of his friends. He recognized that he was losing people because of his behavior, so he made an effort to change. He started being more involved, more attentive to his friends' needs, and made gestures of kindness. But over time, his friends noticed that his gestures were often self-serving. They were aimed at making himself feel better rather than genuinely connecting with others. John had not truly changed, he had just hidden his selfishness behind acts of kindness. His core issue wasn't addressed. His behavior had improved, but his motivation remained the same. Identifying people who aren't really changing. So how can you tell if someone is hiding their flaws instead of actually changing? This part of the video is crucial because, once you recognize these behaviors, you'll be better equipped to navigate your relationships and avoid falling into the illusion of change. 1. Inconsistent behavior. People who haven't changed at their core often show inconsistent behavior. They might act one way for a period, only to slip back into old habits when the pressure's off. This could manifest as someone who's overly patient and caring for a few weeks, only to revert to being distant, cold, or unresponsive when things get tough. 2. Excuses for past actions. They may not take full responsibility for their actions, opting instead to explain away their behavior with excuses like, "That's just how I was raised," or "I had a bad day." True change requires ownership of one's actions and a willingness to acknowledge and address past mistakes without blaming circumstances or others. 3. Blaming others. A person who is hiding their flaws may continue to shift blame onto others for their shortcomings. They may present themselves as the victim or as someone who's constantly being misunderstood. But true change requires self-reflection and a willingness to admit when one is wrong or has hurt someone. 4. Lack of deep self-awareness. A person who is hiding their flaws will avoid true introspection. They might seem to reflect, but they won't actually engage in deep self-examination. They're more likely to point fingers at others than look inward. 5. Superficial improvements. They might work on fixing small things like their appearance, their routines, or their social media profile, but they rarely address the deeper emotional or psychological issues, like insecurity, jealousy, or unresolved trauma. How to overcome the illusion of change. So, how do we overcome the illusion of change in ourselves and others? Let's start with self-awareness. Begin by asking yourself, are you truly changing? Or are you just covering up your flaws for the sake of appearance? Look inward. True change isn't easy. It's messy, uncomfortable, and requires a great deal of introspection. It's not about the visible actions, it's about the unseen shift in your mindset and values. Real-life example. If you're in a relationship with someone who seems to have changed, ask yourself, are they actively working on their internal world, Or is it all for show? Are they addressing the deeper issues that affect the relationship, or are they just better at concealing their behavior? To overcome this illusion, practice accountability. When you see someone's superficial changes, hold them accountable. Ask the hard questions. Expect deep change, not just surface-level adjustments. True transformation is not about pretending to be someone you're not. It's about becoming who you're supposed to be, confronting your flaws head-on, and evolving from the inside out. Final reflections. Ultimately, recognizing that some people don't change, they just hide their flaws better, can be liberating. It frees you from the illusion that someone else's superficial change will resolve everything. It also frees you to focus on your own growth, your own journey. So, if you're struggling with this realization, whether it's in yourself or in a relationship, know that change is hard, and it's a slow process. It's not about quick fixes or shallow improvements. Understand that true transformation involves going through the uncomfortable, sometimes painful process of growth. If this video resonated with you, if you've been stuck in this pattern of superficial change, take a moment. Reflect on your own actions and the relationships you hold dear. Have you been hiding your flaws? Or are you truly changing? Ask yourself the hard questions, and if you see that something is only skin deep, know that you have the power to go deeper. If you found this video helpful or insightful, hit that like button. It helps us continue these important conversations. And if you're ready to dive deeper into the complexities of modern behavior, subscribe to the channel. We explore these topics every week, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Thanks for watching.